Welcome back to this C++ course for the Arduino IDE. In the last lesson we took a tour of the Arduino IDE, and in this lesson we're going to take the next step, which is to start on our first sketch. So our first sketch, what are we going to do? Well, normally when people do a course for the Arduino, the first thing they start doing is plugging in various modules and items. Usually there's the blink sketch at the beginning and the flashing of LEDs and all those sort of things. But in this course I'm going to take a slightly different route and look at the way that we would learn to program any other computer language. Because one of the issues that I see with people when they're learning to program the Arduino is that they're taking other people's code, and there's no problem with taking other people's code and recycling it, but it's almost getting to the point now where that code is being taken and individuals are no longer learning anything. Now, the whole point of the Arduino was that youngsters and older ones alike can learn how to program a microprocessor. And if we don't know how to develop our own code, the danger is that we take other people's code, we can even get that code to work. So we finish up with something that's working, the lights are coming on, the wheels are turning, but we have no idea why. And then we start to have problems when we want to join different sketches or modules together. So this course is going to take a little bit more of a traditional route to learning to program, and I hope that you'll bear with me. Please feel free to do some of these other courses so you can see some lights come on, but this course will give you, I hope, some basics skills in understanding how the C++ language works for the Arduino. So the first part of this lesson, we're going to learn to understand how a sketch is laid out, basically the fundamental loops, functions that make up the sketch. The next thing that we're going to learn is how to comment code. Now you might think, why is that so important? But good commenting is actually crucial to any script or code that you write, because when you look back on that code in a few months' time or even a few years' time, without good commenting, you will have no idea what you were actually doing at the time, and also if someone else looks on that code, they will have no idea either. And it's why so often you can download a piece of code, and if it's not well commented, again, whatever it's trying to do will work, but you have no idea why. Another thing that we're going to learn today is to learn the best practices on saving our code. Now you might think, hang on a minute, just press save. Well, what we're going to look at is a bit of a file structure on how we save our code, because once you've got a few thousand different sketches in your folder, you're never going to find anything. It's going to be total mayhem. And when you want that special bit of code that you wrote 3 years ago, you're going to be thinking, well, what did I call it? How did I save it? What was I doing at the time? So we're going to learn sort of the best practices on saving our code, and going alongside that we're going to understand the importance of versioning code. Now, versioning code is where you write a version and then you write the next version, and it's the way that we save these things. So those are going to be the basic aims of the lesson today. We are going to create a sketch. It's actually going to be a sketch that does nothing, but it's going to teach us how to write comments and deal with these various items. So let's get started. Let's start to get into the IDE. Now I've just opened up the IDE. It's a brand new sketch. We can tell that because it's just sketch underscore and then part of the date. The first thing we need to do is attach my Arduino. Got the magic boing, and we're going to set the right Arduino, because at the moment it says that I've got an Arduino Mega, and the Arduino that I just connected was an Arduino Uno. So let's not make one of those basic errors. Let's select an Uno and make sure COM port 26, yes, we've got the right COM port. So we're not going to get errors when we start to try and compile our code and upload it. Okay, so in front of us we have a blank sketch, and I'm just going to try and explain to you what we have here, because even in a blank sketch there's a few things to learn. We have two functions. Now you can tell they're a function. They have a thing that says void, which means you don't need to panic about it too much at the moment, but they're not going to return any information. They have a name with their little brackets, and then you've got the other set of brackets, and you can see the two ends of the brackets. If you highlight one bracket, the other end will highlight. So that makes up one function that's called setup, and we have another function here that's called loop. Now these two functions are in every single Arduino sketch. We may add 2 or 3 more functions, we might add 1,000 more functions, but no matter how many you have, the minimum number of functions will always be these two, and they are both required. If you remove either of these functions, your sketch will not work. So what are these? Well, putting it simply, setup is the things that is done before the program really gets going. So to put it in a simple example, this is a bit like if you're going to school or you're going to work. This is you before you leave. You're in the house, you're packing your bag, you're putting your stuff in your bag, you packed lunch, you've made sure you've got washed and dressed and everything's ready to go, because you know that once you've set out, you can never come back. You're going to leave for work, and so it's a one-off thing, the packing of the bag. And that's very much what happens in the setup area of your script. So this is where things will be started off. It's where maybe we'll tell the various pins of the Arduino what they're going to be doing, whether they're going to be inputs or outputs. It might be somewhere where we begin to communicate with different things. But it's all things that just happen once. A bit like when you turn your car on a modern car, you put the ignition key in, you turn it, and all those lights start to flash on the dashboard, all the warning lights. Basically, the microprocessor behind there is connecting up all the systems, getting everything ready before you start turning that starter motor. And that starter motor only turns once, and once that's gone, then the engine is running and you drive on. And if you like, the main function here, loop, is our driving function. This is when we've done all of our setup and our code is now running, and what it waits for here is various inputs and outputs. So you might have a button, you might have a sensor, it's taking the readings from those things, and then it's reacting to those readings. So that's basically what these two functions do. And as we start to write more complex sketches, you'll start to see them come to life. Now, as I said at the beginning, this first sketch we're going to do is going to be about comments. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to save the file. So we're going to go save as. And if you remember, when we looked at how to set up our file structure right at the very beginning, I'll just drag this other window in. Do you remember we were going to create a folder called Arduino? We have our IDE that's been installed. Yours probably, if you're just installing it now, is probably 0.15. If you're installing in a month's time, it'll be 0.16 or higher. And then we had created next to it a folder called My Arduino Sketches, where we're going to keep all of our sketches. Now, as soon as we start to create sketches, the IDE creates a folder in our sketches folder that's called libraries. And at the moment, apart from a bit of readme text, there's nothing in there. But later on, as our programs become more complex and we start to use libraries, Now a library is, if you like, someone else's code, or it might even be some, when you get very good, that you write yourself, but it's some code that's usually been written to help you connect to a various sensor or module that can be reused over and over again, and it gets put in the libraries folder and our sketch will connect to it. Now you don't have to worry about that today because we're not going to be dealing with that, but it's this folder where we're going to save our sketches to. And the important thing now is how we set up the structure within that. Now this first sketch is just going to be about comments. So what are we going to call our sketch? Well, normally we would just call it something like comments, but if we just put it in the main folder, can you imagine if we were doing something with a particular module where we're writing dozens of different sketches, we could finish up with dozens and dozens of sketches called comments. How do we keep them in order? So the best system that I've found is to create a folder, and we're going to call this folder comments, but then we're going to save our sketch inside it. And again, this is the little bit about versioning. We're going to call our sketch comments v1. Now I'll save that. So now we can see that the sketch has been called comments v1, but also in our sketches folder, if I can just get back to it, it says racing rapidly. There we go. We've got the folder, we've got comments v1, and in comments v1 is our sketch. Now you'll notice that the sketch is called exactly the same as the folder that it's placed in, and that is something that the Arduino IDE forces on you. Some other IDEs don't, but certainly as a beginner it's not a problem for us, and it helps us. Now the reason I've called it comments v1 is because when we write code, if we just wrote a lot of code and kept updating it and keep saving it, what happens when you get a bug in your code? You sort of think, okay, what has caused the problem? What we do when we're versioning is we will write a certain amount of code, then we will save it as a version, and then we'll write a bit more and then save it again. That way when things go wrong, we can go back to the last bit of code that worked, and we don't waste hours and hours. Because I can tell you, if you've got a very, very long sketch, thousands of lines of code, and suddenly it all goes wrong, it can be quite frustrating not knowing where the problem is. So now we're going to start to look at comments. Now in this basic sketch there are already 2 comments, and you can see that these 2 comments are displayed by having two they're actually division signs. If you look on a numeric keyboard towards the right of your keyboard above the number keypad, you'll see the division sign, and then sort of it looks like a star, which is the multiplication symbol. So these are the 2 symbols that are used to start comments. The reason they're used is because historically programmers were always on the numeric keypad. They didn't use a mouse, and it was just one of those keys that was very easy to get to. So comments, these are what are called single line comments. So I'm going to tab this down a little bit. We're going to start off our comment, and a comment can be placed anywhere. Okay, so I can take, I'm going to copy that, I'm going to paste it into this loop, and if I tried to compile this or to see if it works, hold your breath while it works it all out for the first time. Always that moment of silence. There we go. It's done compiling, no errors. So commenting that way is not a problem. Now what I want you to see here, let's imagine I can place this comment anywhere, but it's a long comment. Whoops. Be useful if I could spell. And it's gone on the next line. Okay, so let's see what happens now when we try to compile our code. As you can see, we get an error message, and basically the compiler is saying, what on earth is this load of rubbish? It can see something's there, but it just doesn't know what on earth is going on, so it says I've got an error. And the reason is, of course, it hasn't got the 2 lines at the front. Now, if you think about it, if we wanted to write a number of lines of code, this could start to be a real problem. Now at this point, we're going to think about versioning, and what we're going to do, we're going to go File, Save As, and now we're going to go Comments version 2. Now obviously this is a bit of a silly one because we're not really doing much, but it's just to show you how to get into the discipline, because now we're going to learn about multi-line comments. Now if you look at your numeric keypad, you're going to start to see what the programmers were doing when they thought this one up. So it uses the same sort of / and next to it the star or multiplication symbol, and if I now press return, you can see that it puts a sort of a multiplication symbol and again another multiplication symbol and a /. This section here, this is the start of the comment block, and I would love to write on the end here, but I can't. So I'm going to put a little bit here. This is the last line of the comment block. Okay, because anything I write after here, some text, as you can see, it comes out in black rather than the grey that we see for comments. This is one of the things that an IDE does. If you notice, different bits of the code are highlighted in different colours. So comments are highlighted in a sort of a light grey. Because that is dark, it's not within the comment box. So I'm just going to remove that. And we're just going to press the compile button and check that it all works. Okay, bit quicker, and you'll often notice with the compiler it seems to work quicker the second or third time round. There are some technical reasons why that can happen, but we're not going to worry about that. Now, we now understand what a block comment is and single line comments. So we're now going to go to Save As version 3. Again, we are learning to do our versioning. And this time we're going to set up our comments as if we're really writing a sketch. And I'm just going to show you a couple of things that are worth doing. So we'll delete everything as if we've got a brand new sketch. And the first thing to do is start at the top, put a few lines in. And what I tend to do here is put a title in. So comments. The date, which today for me is the 15th of the 7th 2021, so I know what day I did it. And then the next thing, I will write the purpose of this code. So this version starts to explain how to set up comments in our code. Now, very often if I'm doing a new version, what I will add there is I'll say what I did in the previous version and then explain what am I adding in this new version. But basically put an explanation in there. Now, if you are having a sort of setting up something where you've connected an LED or something like that, you're putting using various pins. Very often what I'll do here is list the pins that I've used. So let's just make something up. We'll go pin 13 because it's got an LED on it automatically. We'll put LED. We'll then go, and I try to do these in numeric order. So let's go back one and we'll go pin 8 and we'll say that it's got a relay. Now, the reason I tend to do this is when you start to use a board and you start to fill up all the pins, especially if you're using a bigger board like an Arduino Mega, you've got 40 odd pins. Now, you're not going to remember what every pin is doing, but also there's that danger that you start to try and use a pin twice. So if you list the pins that you're using in the top of your code, it will help you to know what's going on. Also, if a wire falls out, because sometimes it'll drop out of the breadboard or it'll fall out of the Arduino if you're just using pushing connectors, you can start to remember what's going on. You might decide here that you want to get very detailed and go blue wire. Okay, just so that we know what's going on. So use the header to explain to yourself what the project is about, when you wrote it, what the purpose of this version is, and start to list what your pins are doing. It might seem a lot of work at the beginning, but trust me, when you start to get to bigger projects, you will really start to value what you are doing. And then as you write your lines of code, so I'm going to just type a line in here. Okay, this line of code, and we'll see it in our next sketch, our next lesson, which will be the dreaded Hello World. This starts the serial communication. So what we're going to do here, there's two ways of commenting. Let's get rid of their original comment. Some people put their comment above. So start serial communication at 9600. The other way that other people will comment is they'll put it at the end of the line. Now, it really comes down to your preference. I tend to prefer putting it slightly above. And the reason for that is it gives me a comment. Let's add another line of code. Serial print line. Hello. There we go. So that starts my serial communication. And then my next comment, print hello to the serial monitor. Okay, so as you can see, I just find that easy to read. I could have put it like that. No problem either way, it really doesn't matter. Just another little thing, sometimes you might want to leave a space like that. I'm going to set this back to the way that I like it. maybe a bit of OCD there, but now you notice I've got the lines a bit messed up. One of the things that's a useful tool here is auto format. Press the auto format and it makes everything line up nicely. Now it doesn't really make much of a difference at this point, but later on you'll see when we've got functions within functions and various things going on, loops and all these things, it really helps you to understand your code and will help you prevent you from losing these brackets. So as you can see, we've commented our code, we understand what is going on, and a couple of things to think about. It doesn't matter how much you write in comments. It does not affect the performance of the Arduino at all, because when this script is uploaded to the Arduino, it strips all of the comments out. The Arduino really isn't interested in your comments. Those are purely for our benefit, so you can write as much as you want, and it is good programming style to put comments in. Talk yourself through what you are doing and make sure you understand. So I hope that's been useful for you. As you can see, we've looked at our first sketch. We now understand how the setup and the main loop work. We've learnt to comment our code. We've learnt the best practice on saving our code, and we've understand the importance of versioning. So hope to see you soon for the next lesson, where we'll actually start to get something to do something. So bye for now.